When folks talk about motorcycles from the 1980s, the same names always come up. Suzuki GSX-R 750, Yamaha VMAX, maybe the Kawasaki Ninja 900R. And sure, those machines earned their place in the spotlight. But what about the ones that didn't? The bikes that were just as bold, just as fast, maybe even more advanced, yet somehow slipped through the cracks, buried beneath chrome and forgotten headlines. These were the rebels, the misfits, the misunderstood pioneers. Too different, too early, or maybe just too ahead of their time for the world to catch up. Today, we're dusting off that forgotten corner of motorcycle history and shining a light on 10 incredible machines from the 1980s you probably never heard of. But once you do, you'll wonder how they ever got lost in the first place. If you're a true rider at heart, you might just find your next two-wheeled obsession hiding in this list. Let's dive in. Number 1. 1983. Honda CX650 Turbo. Let's start with a machine that didn't just push boundaries. It challenged the entire idea of what a motorcycle could be in the early 1980s. The 1983 Honda CX650 Turbo wasn't built to fit in. It was built to lead. While most bikes back then were still clinging to carburetors and air-cooled engines, Honda introduced something that felt like it came from the next century. A fuel-injected, liquid-cooled V-twin with turbocharging and fully digital engine management. With 674 cubic centimeters under the tank and nearly 100 horsepower, it was a rocket compared to other middleweight bikes of the day, which typically topped out around 60 to 70 horses. But it wasn't just fast. It was smooth, refined, and eerily futuristic. Honda even marketed it as the motorcycle of the future. Unfortunately, the future arrived a little too soon. Riders weren't ready for the complexity or the price tag. At nearly twice the cost of similar 650s, the CX650 Turbo proved too much for the market to handle. Production ended after just 1 year, with only about 1,700 units ever made. But for collectors and true enthusiasts, that scarcity has only made it more legendary, a symbol of Honda's boldness in an era when most were still playing it safe. Number 2. 1985. Suzuki RG500 Gamma. The 1985 Suzuki RG500 Gamma wasn't built for comfort. It wasn't built for beginners. It was built for one thing: speed, and it came with no apologies. This was a race bike in street clothes, a snarling two-stroke rocket that brought the raw spirit of Grand Prix racing to everyday asphalt. Under the seat was a 498 cubic centimeter square 4 two-stroke engine, lifted almost directly from Suzuki's dominant RG500 GP racer. It cranked out 95 horsepower and sat inside a lightweight chassis, tipping the scales at just 340 pounds. That gave it a power-to-weight ratio that could embarrass supercars of the day. Crack the throttle, and the front wheel lifted. Lean into a curve, and it dove in like it was reading your mind. It wasn't a ride, it was a challenge. But here's the kicker. American buyers never got their hands on it, not officially. The RG500 Gamma was never sold in the US, reserved instead for Canada, Europe, and a few select markets. That scarcity only added to its mystique. Today, for those lucky enough to find one, it's a buried treasure, untamed, unforgettable, and a reminder of what happens when race engineering slips loose on public roads. Number 3. 1984. Yamaha RZ500. The 1984 Yamaha RZ500 didn't whisper, it roared. This wasn't a bike built for the showroom. It was built to let Grand Prix thunder loose on public roads. Tucked inside its frame was a liquid-cooled 499 cubic centimeter V4 two-stroke engine, producing between 88 and 90 horsepower. But it wasn't the numbers that made it unforgettable. It was the way it delivered them. The engine note had a raw mechanical snarl, and the throttle response was immediate, like flipping a switch on a live wire. Power came in bursts, wild and sudden, and at just over 430 pounds dry, it had just enough weight to stay grounded while still feeling every bit as nimble as a racer. Yamaha took the tech directly from its factory YZR500 GP bikes, once piloted by legends like Kenny Roberts. This was no imitation. It was the real thing, just legal enough to ride to work, if you dared. But emissions regulations in the US kept it out of American dealerships. Like the RG500, it became a ghost bike, one that showed up in garages, through back channels, and grey imports. For those who've ridden one, the RZ500 isn't just a motorcycle. It's a memory that howls, a living, breathing reminder of the last wild days of two-stroke dominance. Number 4. 1984. Bimot KB2 Laser. Some bikes chase speed, others chase power. But the 1984 Bimot KB2 Laser chased something different: perfection. Built not by committee, but by craftsmen, the KB2 was a rolling piece of Italian artistry, born in a time when form and function danced beautifully together. And at the center of it all was one man, Massimo Tamburini, the genius who would later design the iconic Ducati 916. The KB2 wasn't about brute force. It used a modest 550cc inline-4 engine borrowed from the Kawasaki Z130, putting out just around 55 horsepower. But that wasn't the point. The bike weighed barely 330 pounds, and every inch of it was precision-tuned. With its hand-welded steel trellis frame and compact geometry, it felt less like riding a machine and more like becoming part of one. The steering was sharp, the balance was perfect. It didn't just respond to input, it seemed to anticipate your next move. It was, by every sense of the word, telepathic. Only 177 examples were ever built, making it one of the rarest Bimotas ever created. And today, it's not just a collector's item, it's a quiet reminder that sometimes the most unforgettable rides aren't the loudest. They're the ones that speak directly to the soul. Number 5. 1985. Honda NS 400R. Not every great motorcycle was built to dominate the spotlight. Some were crafted for a different kind of rider, the one who values precision over power and balance over bravado. That's where the 1985 Honda NS 400R comes in. Inspired by the NS 500 that carried Freddie Spencer to a world championship, the NS 400R brought Honda's race-winning DNA to the street, but with a twist all its own. Instead of chasing raw horsepower, Honda chose finesse. The bike featured a 387 cubic centimeter V3 two-stroke engine, producing around 72 horsepower. Weighing in at just about 360 pounds, it delivered an incredibly nimble, responsive ride. But what really set it apart was the technology packed inside. The NS 400R came equipped with Honda's ATAC exhaust system, anti-dive front forks, a lightweight alloy frame, and dual front discs, all tuned to work in perfect harmony. It didn't scream for attention. It rewarded the rider who paid attention. Unlike its rowdier two-stroke rivals, the NS 400R wasn't about shocking you. It was about control, confidence, and clarity at speed. Unfortunately, That made it a tough sell. Riders wanted bigger engines, louder personalities, but for those who knew what they were looking at, the NS 400R was something special, a rider's bike in every sense, quietly carrying the torch for intelligent performance in a decade full of excess. Number 6. 1989 Yamaha SRX600. In a decade obsessed with horsepower, high-tech, and ever louder statements, the 1989 Yamaha SRX600 took a different path. It went back to basics. No fairings, no computers, no turbochargers or futuristic gimmicks. Just a simple, air-cooled 608 cubic centimeter single-cylinder engine, a 5-speed gearbox, and the kind of mechanical honesty you don't often see anymore. Putting out around 45 horsepower and weighing only about 370 pounds, the SRX600 wasn't built to win races. It was built to feel right. Its slim cafe racer silhouette, wire-spoke wheels, and exposed steel frame gave it a timeless look. But it was the ride that really mattered. Every vibration, every gear shift, every pull of the throttle felt pure, direct, unfiltered, and deeply satisfying. It wasn't a bike for spec sheet warriors, and that may be why it never sold well. Riders at the time wanted more cylinders, more flash, more of everything. But the SRX600 wasn't about more. It was about enough. Today, it's quietly finding its place among collectors who value simplicity and soul over speed. The SRX600 reminds us that riding doesn't always have to be loud to be meaningful. Sometimes the best connection to the road comes from cutting everything else away, until all that's left is you, the machine, and the miles ahead. Number 7. 1978 to 1989. Kawasaki Z13000. If the SRX600 was about minimalism, the Kawasaki Z13000 was its complete opposite, a bold, unapologetic showcase of mechanical excess. First introduced in 1978 and produced through the late 80s, the Z1300 was Kawasaki's answer to one simple question: what happens when you throw everything at the wall? And it sticks. At its core was a massive 1,286 cubic centimeter inline-six engine, producing around 120 horsepower, a staggering figure for its time. It wasn't just fast, it was silky smooth, thanks to its water cooling and flawless balance. Riders often described it as gliding down the road on a perfectly tuned turbine. No buzz, no rattle, just power that flowed like liquid steel. But that smoothness came at a price. The Z1300 tipped the scales at nearly 700 pounds, guzzled fuel like a V8 muscle car, and demanded serious commitment in terms of maintenance. This wasn't a machine you parked casually. It required space, skill, and a deep respect for what it was, an engineering flex in its purest form. Even with later upgrades like fuel injection, the Z130 never went mainstream, but maybe it was never supposed to. Today, it stands as a monument to Kawasaki's ambition, a beast built not for the masses, but for those who wanted something truly extraordinary between their knees. Number 8. 1983. Lavadar RGS1000. The 1983 Lavadar RGS1000 wasn't built to scream down the drag strip or dominate the showroom. It was built for the discerning rider, for the gentleman who valued long-distance speed, elegance, and that unmistakable Italian flair. This was sport touring, done the Lavadar way. At its core was a 981 cubic centimeter air-cooled inline triple, delivering about 83 horsepower and a low, growling exhaust note that could only come from Italy. It didn't demand attention, it earned it. The design was sleek and refined, with integrated panniers, a sculpted fuel tank recessed into the frame, and a raised tail section that gave it a flowing, aerodynamic stance. It was fast, it was smooth, and it was rare, very rare. Between its high price and Lavadar's limited dealer network, the RGS1000 never saw the kind of global success it deserved. But for those who rode one, it wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a statement. A machine that blended power, precision, and poise in a way only the Italians could pull off. Today, it remains one of the last great motorcycles from a brand that valued craftsmanship over mass appeal. A beautiful farewell from a company that always rode its own road. Number 9. 1985 Kawasaki Alazura 650. The 1985 Kawasaki Alazura 650 is one of those machines that slipped through the cracks, not because it lacked charm or pedigree, but because it arrived wearing the wrong name. Beneath its sleek Italian styling was the heart of a Ducati Panther, reimagined and rebadged under the Kawasaki banner after the company acquired Ducati in the early 1980s. At its core was a 647 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin, producing around 55 horsepower, paired with Ducati's signature belt-driven cams and a lightweight trellis frame. It wasn't the fastest bike on the market, not by a long shot, but it had something many others didn't: character. Light, nimble, and undeniably Italian, the Alazura offered a riding experience that was more about feel than figures. Its lines were clean, its posture was refined, and it carried itself with the quiet confidence of a machine that didn't need to shout to be noticed. But in an era dominated by Japanese superbikes, boasting big power and bold designs, the Alazura was easy to overlook. Today, it's become something of a hidden gem, a Ducati in disguise that delivers authentic Italian performance without the collector's price tag. For riders who know what they're looking at, the Alazura is a rare opportunity to own a piece of Italian motorcycling history that most never even knew existed. Number 10. 1989 Norton F1. The 1989 Norton F1 didn't just look different, it was different. Based on the RCW 588 that conquered the Isle of Man TT, this street-legal version brought something entirely new to the road. A 588cc twin-rotor Wankel engine. No pistons, no vibration, just smooth, hypnotic thrust and a high-pitched whine that turned heads before it ever came into view. With around 95 horsepower on tap and a lightweight chassis dressed in sleek aerodynamic bodywork, the F1 was every bit a race machine. It wasn't about brute strength, it was about purity of motion. Throttle response was crisp, acceleration smooth and linear, and the sound, some say, it didn't growl or roar, it sang. Only about 140 units were ever built, just enough to meet homologation rules. It was expensive, hard to maintain, and totally unlike anything else on the market. That made it a tough sell then, but a true treasure now. For collectors, the Norton F1 isn't just rare, it's iconic. A last wild shot at glory from a legendary British marque trying to defy the odds and rewrite what a sport bike could be. And for those who appreciate bold engineering over convention, it stands as one of the most fascinating motorcycles the 80s ever gave us. A true original, strange, brilliant, and unforgettable. The 1980s were a decade of bold ideas and fearless engineering, when motorcycle makers weren't afraid to take chances. Turbochargers, rotary engines, wild chassis designs, these weren't just gimmicks, they were statements. Not every machine on this list found success, but each one carries the spirit of a time when innovation still meant risk. Have you ever seen one of these bikes in the wild? Was there a model here that sparked a memory, or maybe a long-lost dream? We'd love to hear your story. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and join a community that still celebrates the forgotten, the rare, and the revolutionary. And if you enjoyed this ride through hidden history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next journey into the legends time tried to bury, but we refuse to forget.